Conference Championship Sunday. We're talking DFS over at Draftkings and Fanduel. I'm Adam Zdroik, joined by Ryan Belongia. A lot of money on the table this week, and we're only talking to two gamers, so this might just take 5 minutes. So Ryan, tell us all your plays right now, and then we'll get out of here. But what's going on, Ryan?
Yeah, not much. I mean, a couple of great games here. Tough DFS slate, but some really good games. Commanders off that big upset of the Lions, head to Philadelphia. That spread actually opened up 4.5, and it's jumped to Eagles -6 now, I believe. Or I see, what is it, down to 5.5 now? I know 6 or 6.5. Yeah, so people are kind of on the Eagles in that spot, and then rematch of Chiefs Bills. Chiefs 1.5-point favorites. You know, a lot of people saying that the Chiefs have had some help to get here. But two great games to watch. For DFS, I think the slate is pretty difficult, just in the way that there's only like a few, I don't know, like you said to me before the show, like there's only like 3 guys I want to play. And there's a couple guys who everybody's going to play. And then after that, you kind of just got to, I don't know, hope you pick the right guys. But it's not very obvious. But I think we'll be able to break it down in a way where, I don't know, like I think the best way to break this slate down is to just tell people the projections and the ownership, and because leverage is really the way to win these slates. Like, yeah, I don't know. It'll make more sense when we start talking about it.
Yeah, unlike last week, we also the weather report. It's gonna be cold, but not. We don't have to worry about the same kind of stuff we had to worry about last week, where that Rams Eagles game kind of went off the rails a little bit in the second half with all the snow. So it's just gonna be a little cold, but no precipitation to worry about. So that is somewhat good news here. Something we don't have to throw into.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, everyone was complaining about that too last week, the snow games and how much it changes everything. And it changed things for DFS too. I mean, that game played so much differently. Yeah, it's nice that we're not going to have
that. Injury-wise, not entirely sure what's going on with Zacchaeus, but Goddard did not practice on Thursday. I think that's the main one for DFS purposes. Also, their center did not practice, if you think that has an effect on Saquon Barkley. But that's really it for injuries. So,
yeah, Goddard would be a big one, but
yeah,
I don't know about that. Like, it seems we'll know more today, but I have a hard time seeing him not playing.
He's been a guy who's in and out of training and practice anyway. So, and then you got the conference championship. It's not like, okay, he's going to miss the game or anything. You don't think, at least, unless he broke his ankle and he has an ankle injury where he can't walk. But we don't think that's the case. But let's actually start with the plays that everyone are going to play here. Let's just get those out of the way here, I guess. You think we could do that?
Sure. Yeah, like, okay, Saquon Barkley, there's almost never been a bigger lock. I think he'll be over 90% in cash games for sure. Even in high stakes GPPs, I'd expect over 90%. There's not anybody else to play really. And his salary is affordable because, yeah, you don't really have to spend at receiver. You don't really have to spend at tight end
or quarterback.
He's really the only good running back on the slate. That might not be the only one that projects well on the slate. So I think Saquon's just a really easy click. But that's about it. I mean, some people, you could say the same about Kelsey.
Whoa, we call him playoff Kelsey on the show.
Okay, sorry, playoff Kelsey. I mean, he proved that again last week. His price is up to $6K now, so it does make it a little bit more of a decision. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I think Saquon is just an easy click. Quarterback is pretty interesting. So I checked 3 different projection sites, and they all have all 4 quarterbacks within about 1.5 of each other, which, because of that,
that's about
Mahomes projects the best point per dollar by quite a bit. So I think he'll be the most popular. It's a comfortable clicking cash games. I think you could see him getting up to probably be around 35% would be my guess. Then you'll have Hurts and Daniels in the 20s and probably Allen a little below that. So quarterback, it's one of those where we have 4 great quarterbacks. They're all good for DFS. You could, I guess some would say that Mahomes hasn't been, but he's had some games. And now that he's down to 6K, he's definitely good for DFS. So it's one of those where nobody can really tell you anything. I mean, these are all great quarterbacks. They can all get there. You've got to script these games out. Who do you think's going to win? How do you think the games are going to go? And you can kind of play whoever quarterback you want. So I wouldn't be like, kind of for this whole slate, I wouldn't be like looking for, I don't know, experts to tell you anything. Nobody can really tell you anything at this point. Like, pick a script.
Continue listening to the show. Sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's what we can tell you. But like, besides Saquon, there aren't really any locks. So if you want to get up to Daniels, you can afford it. If you want to get up to Allen, you can afford it. Like, those are good tournament plays. I like the cheaper guys just because I think those teams are probably going to win. And I kind of like some of the expensive options. Maybe we'll talk about receiver. There's some expensive guys there. They're not even expensive, but just guys that aren't going to get played as much. But yeah, quarterbacks, it's play whoever you want. Who do you like, Adam?
Unfortunately, my first idea was Mahomes. It just makes the most sense. Like, if you want to go cash, I think Mahomes just is the play. He's the cheapest one. He arguably has the best matchup against the Bills. And that's kind of where I think it ends. I mean, he's 1,500 cheaper than Allen. Best matchup. Arguably, you could say, okay, Washington's defense is maybe worse than Buffalo's defense. But I think if you look at it between, okay, Mahomes versus Hurts, and then you got Barkley in there, it's more likely that Barkley is going to have 200 yards and a couple touchdowns than whoever's running the ball for the Chiefs, Hunt/Pacheco, having 200 yards and a couple touchdowns.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like Hurts just hasn't been passing the ball that much. If you look at his recent game logs, this offense is built around Barkley, more or less. And Hurts obviously can do stuff with his legs. The passing offense just really hasn't been there lately, per se. So I think Mahomes is just the obvious play. And in tournaments, if you feel the need to get different, which makes sense if you want to win $1 million, like Allen and Daniels are right there, more expensive. You figure they're going to be less popular. And they probably have more upside than Mahomes. So they just make sense, I think, from a GPP tournament perspective.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's really all there is to say. In cash games, Mahomes is the move. I mean, if you really don't want to play Mahomes, you can play Hurts. But I think Adam broke it down well. Saquon is there to steal some of the touchdowns, where in Kansas City, most of it goes through Mahomes. And he does have a decent matchup, at least on this slate.
So I guess what's your pick between Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels? Do you have a
I've been so impressed with Daniels. I mean, he was incredible again last week. He's been putting up big scores and not even getting the rushing touchdowns yet, too. So there could be more there. Brian Robinson had a couple last week. I think one the week before as well. And nobody's been able to stop Daniels. What if he's just the best? I mean, what if he's just on his way to being the best already?
The best.
Tampa Bay couldn't stop him. Detroit couldn't stop him. I mean, these QBs like Daniels and Hurts and Lamar, when you give them 4 downs, it's just so tough to get them off the field. I think we could see that in this game, just like 8, 9. What did they have? Like an 11-minute drive? The Eagles have a ton of those. I mean, it's so tough to stop these quarterbacks with 4 downs. I don't know. I've been really impressed with Daniel. So I think I will play him on some tournament lineups, especially because I like a couple of his pass catchers, especially De'Ami Brown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's pretty close overall between Allen and Daniels. Both have that rushing aspect. You look at Josh Allen, the most rushes he's had in the game this season was in the win against the Chiefs. This is a massive game for the Bills. They got to get over this hump, and Allen is going to be active with his legs, probably even more so than he has been the last couple playoff games. but Daniels is he's always going to be active with his leg, so that's always there. And like you said, the touchdowns, maybe the touchdowns come in this one.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to overlook Allen. I like Allen too. I mean, this is a spot for one of those Superman Josh Allen games. Wasn't the game against the Chiefs where he had that like long touchdown run on fourth down? Was that against the Chiefs? I think so. Yeah, I mean, I expect him to be running more here. He ran for 2 touchdowns last week. I mean, when they get inside the 5, he is going to run for touchdowns. Yeah, I really like Allen too. Probably play him in tournaments as well.
Yeah, it's really close. Eagles, arguably, according to some metrics, top defense here, and the Chiefs, a good defense, but they haven't been over the season. They haven't been as elite as the Eagles. So, pretty close one. Both guys have huge upside, and really just make a decision. I'd say there's probably, or I'll say more points in the Bills Chiefs game. And I'd probably lean on Allen more than Daniels, but again, at the end of the day,
yeah,
it's pretty close.
I think that's fine. The Commanders total, I think, is down to 20. It's the lowest implied total of the 4. And I would say, just if you're trying to debate the two, just go with the team that you think, like if you think one of them is going to win, or whichever one of the teams you think is going to perform better, that's the guy you should go with.
Yeah. And then running back, we talked about Barkley, 8,600. And as Ryan said, like, who else are you going to play if you don't play Barkley? That is the question. James Cook, tough matchup here, Chiefs. Their run defense is kind of where they excel compared to their pass defense. James Cook, 6,900. Do you want to go there? Brian Robinson, 5,600. Again, the Eagles, another good run defense. He hasn't had a ton of success against the Eagles. I'm looking at these prior matchups, below 4 yards a carry in both games. And then Kareem Hunt has been getting more touches than Pacheco for the Chiefs. That's probably the best matchup on paper for a running back, but you already have a split, and you honestly don't know which guy is going to be better. So you have that split with the Chiefs. Eckler, of course, is down there at 5,300, though he went up a few $100 there compared to the last couple games. And you have the Bills backups, and that's kind of what we're looking at. So again, that's why Barkley has, probably the best matchup, and he's probably going to get the most touches. So I guess the question is, who are you going to play with Barkley?
Yeah, Saquon's rushing prop is 130 on Bet365 where I checked. I've never seen that before. That is crazy. I didn't think it was real. Check it out.
130.
Check it out. See where it's at other places. Just rushing yards.
125 Fanduel, 127.5 Draftkings. Yeah, it's up there.
It's the biggest number I can remember seeing. So
that's insane.
Saquon
you usually see like 100.
Right. Like, yeah. 99.5 maybe if it's a really smash spot.
He should be 10K if we're being honest.
It's just such a lock. So after that, where do you go? I think some people will go to Cook because he's just clearly the second best option, even if it's not a great option. It's a tough spot at Kansas City. So I think I see him around like 30%, 35-ish%, along with Eckler. Actually, I think him and Eckler will be the second and third most popular backs. I kind of like Eckler. I think they're going to be in a trailing script probably. He's been catching some passes. He's been looking good with the ball. Got tackled at the 1 last game. It makes sense with Eckler just because with the Chiefs guys, it's a little bit harder to predict, and they haven't been doing great anyways. But I think, the Chiefs guys look pretty good for tournaments. You mentioned Hunt has been a little bit more involved. I think I lean Hunt. It seems like they trust him a little bit more at this point. He also might have 1 or 2 more receptions in him than Pacheco. So, I don't mind going there. Nobody wanted to play Brian Robinson last week, and, he rushed for 2 touchdowns. It's definitely a tougher matchup here, but at least when they get inside the 5, they're willing to give it to Robinson multiple times. So at no ownership, if somebody wanted to take a chance on him, that's fine too. I'm leaning Eckler right now for my second back.
Yeah, for Eckler versus Robinson, I think it is maybe not cash games because Eckler more set for receptions, but $300 difference. And like you said, trailing script, if that does happen, notice that they weren't in that trailing script for the majority of the game against the Lions. Robinson had 0 targets, but against the Bucks, he had 5 targets. So receptions are still possible for Robinson, which I think is relevant there. So if you have the money, especially in tournaments, if Eckler is going to be more popular, like just like move up to Robinson, I think might be the better play, and he's more likely to get goal line touches, I believe. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think a really good tournament play at less ownership than those other guys.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, that's kind of it. Do you wanna take a shot that Ty Johnson or Rayshawn Davis gets like a 40-yard touchdown run or 40-yard touchdown reception? I guess if you wanna play with your money like that, go for it.
I think Ty can't be too bad. You know, we're talking about Eckler and Kareem Hunt. I mean,
Right.
we've seen him involved all season catching passes, right? I mean, how many receiving touchdowns does he have? 4 receiving touchdowns this year. He's caught some long ones.
26-yarder against the Broncos is what it was, I think.
Yeah,
24.
and it's one of those things where the opportunity cost is so low that you can almost click anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if all the running backs outside of Barkley don't get a touchdown, then it doesn't matter. It more or less doesn't matter if you're playing Cook or
what if
Johnson.
you need Barkley, Josh Allen, AJ Brown, and you can only afford that if you go down to
Right.
someone like Ty Johnson. I don't know. Makes sense.
Yeah, the thing about James Cook, sure he's a good tournament play, but I don't know if it's worth it personally, just because of the
Yeah.
matchup. You know they're leading for I think majority of that first matchup. He had 9 for 20 yards in that first game against the Chiefs. Again, maybe it's not going to happen again, but this one is in Kansas City. And then even then, I know he had the 23 carries against the Broncos, but that game was over by the second quarter. So like that same situation's not going to happen. It's always been throughout the season. These other guys will take carries, and then Josh Allen is also going to run the ball plenty too. So while we're talking, okay, Barkley's going to get 20 plus carries, Cook's probably going to be in the 10 to 15 carry range, you think? So, I mean, I just don't think that he's really worth it unless you're banking on 2 touchdowns and 30 yards or something from him, which, it's always possible.
Yeah, I tend to agree. They've used him a little bit more in the playoffs, because it's a bit more important. Like he was out there caught 3 passes last game, and I think he's looked pretty good. But yeah, just in general, not a great spot. A little too expensive for the volume he gets in the matchup.
Yeah, some of our projections have him just Cook barely over Robinson and Hunt, if that says anything right there. So. At wide receiver is, I mean, you mentioned AJ Brown offhand here, but I think, I don't like, I don't like Hurts. I probably like him the least in terms of, a passing quarterback here. But I feel like I was listening to a podcast, I think it was on The Ringer, where they're talking about the Washington cornerbacks they play man, they're all small. So it's basically the perfect matchup for AJ Brown just to bully them kind of a thing. And if I know AJ Brown is, reading books on the sidelines, he hasn't had the great postseason. So maybe that's going to bring his percentage down. But even if Hurts has 150, 180 yards, like this could be a 5 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown for AJ Brown. So I think that's my plug on AJ Brown here, and then I'll shoot it to you now.
Nice, we're on the same page.
Okay.
Yep, I agree. We are. Brown is the cheapest we've seen all season after a couple of bad games, down to 6,800. He just dropped that touchdown. It would have been a touchdown against the Rams down the sideline last week. I think, it's a great matchup for him. Kind of a squeaky wheel spot for him, too, after a couple of bad games in a row. And with his price down, there's going to be a decision between him and McLaurin. And I lean A.J. Brown.
Yeah, better matchup. And I guess at the end of the day, it's a better matchup.
I'm not sure you necessarily need either of them in cash games. I'm not sure how
Are you going to
popular
talk to
they'll
me
be.
about Shakir again? Talk up Shakir. Here we go.
Actually, I no, I'm gonna say the first guy in for cash games for me is Xavier Worthy. Um,
Okay, I also got him in.
I
Yeah.
just think that he's Mahomes' favored receiver by far, and
After
they
Kelsey.
use
Favorite
yeah,
wide
sure, your
receiver.
favorite wide receiver. Yeah, pretty good matchup. They use him in all sorts of spots. Um, I don't know, like it's a weak receiver slate. You mentioned like Shakir. He projects okay too, but he's a little bit more expensive than Worthy. Not as much touchdown upside. Um, you have Hollywood Brown there, who everybody was the most popular receiver on the slate last week, had 0 catches.
Wait, he
He'll be
was?
pretty. He was. Yep.
Are people not listening to our show? Come on.
Yeah, I listened to some other shows, and a popular one touted him as a better play than Xavier Worthy, just regardless of price, just raw points. I about fell out of my chair.
Interesting.
But he dropped a touchdown though too, Hollywood, right? That or would have been down to like the 2. So
Yeah.
Mahomes looked for him on a deep pass. I'm not saying he's a bad play. He's a good play at 4,200. I mean, we saw the 2 games before. He gets targets. His targets per route run is pretty high since he's back from injury. So I think it's a fine play for cash games. Hollywood Brown, I think he'll be popular in that format again. But yeah, I think Worthy's the first guy in for me. I think he's been he was a little bit unlucky not to do better against Houston. It ended up being a Kelsey game. But I mean, look at Worthy prior to that. Like he was basically playing the Rashee Rice role from last year. They're lining him up everywhere. He's the fastest receiver in the league. And they were talking about a stat during the last game, like he's only had like I forget how many, but barely any plays over 20 yards this season, which is just wild. He's had a couple like big drops on those long ones, or that one where he inexplicably stepped out when he didn't have to. It would have been, but like
Yeah.
there's so much more there for Worthy still. So I feel pretty comfortable about that.
Yeah, he had I'm just going through his game logs. He had a couple long ones early in the season, but yeah, more than 20 yards. 20 yards or more, like one reception since week 12, basically. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it makes sense. You look at the target share last week, and this is talk about with AJ Brown. It's a thing where people are going to look at these game logs, they're going to look at these targets. Maybe how people like Hollywood Brown, so maybe they're going to ignore some of that. But he had 2 targets last week. Hopkins had 1. And the same thing with Keon Coleman and Cooper. These guys look at the past games and be like, are these guys getting targets? Are they going to be played? So, I mean, all these guys are in play for, have a shot in tournaments. But like you said, for cash games, definitely Worthy. It seems like he is a favorite receiver target. And even though Hopkins and Hollywood Brown are there, it just seems like those guys are the third read, maybe. I guess you could say Kelsey might be the third read because he'll go through his progressions and then he finds his way to Kelsey. But uh, yeah, I think that you're kind of splitting it with Hollywood Brown and Hopkins, whereas you kind of know what you're getting with Kelsey and Worthy. So
Yeah, I think you said it well. It's like similar with the Bills, why you really can't play any other Bills besides Shakir in cash games. I mean, in tournaments,
mhm.
completely different story. But like for cash games, just there aren't any Bills receivers that see consistent volume. Shakir's targets to route run percentage is just way higher. I mean, we see it. He's gotten like 13 straight games with 6+ targets. Probably not as much upside as the other guys, but we did see him catch that like 35-yarder down the middle last game. So if he gets in the end zone, you could put up a big score. Then the other one to consider too is Devonta Smith. He was pretty popular he's been pretty popular for just because they have him in this 5,800 price now for a while, and AJ Brown had been up at 75. There had been like a big difference between the two. It's not as big of a difference anymore. So I think this week we see Brown more popular than Devonta Smith, but not much. Those guys will like hover around the same. It's another position where just like we can't tell you anything, anything more than we have. Like play whoever you want. Like there aren't that many top plays. Xavier Worthy is the top play in my opinion. I think most projection sites will have him as the top play. People will play Hollywood Brown will be very popular because he's dirt cheap. And then after that, play who you want. Like go down with your own thoughts rather than somebody else's.
Do you like Dyami Brown?
Yes. I'm glad. Yes, I really like Dyami Brown.
Okay.
I think you could, I think you could almost play him in any format as the last guy in. He's shown enough over the last 2 weeks. He's kind of taken over from Zacchaeus. Hold on, I'm just going to bring up the snap counts real quick because I saw, he played 83% of the snaps last week, a season high. And I mean, how can you keep the guy off the field with how good he's been? Is another guy that they'll use on some like short routes, but also can hit deep ones. And in these smaller slates, man, I like to target pass catchers from teams that I think are going to be in trailing scripts. And I think Washington is probably going to be in a trailing script. So yes, I really like Dyami Brown. For tournaments, a lot of people are going to like Dyami Brown. So then for tournaments, I think like guys like Zacchaeus, he's okay for tournaments. I almost prefer taking a chance on Jamison Crowder. There's not too many guys all the way down there this week. He's 3,100, got up to 40% of the snaps last week. And he's a guy that just Daniels looks for. He's a slot guy. But for 3,100, can make some things work. If you're playing Daniels, all he needs to do is find the end zone. But I like these Washington guys, yeah.
I will say for Jay Crow there, Zacchaeus left at some point last week with this hip issue, so that probably added to the snap count there.
I do know that you're right. It might have, but Crowder's 2 catches were on the first drive.
Okay.
He caught the first ball, so he's out there at least.
First drive guy, you got to count on him.
Yeah, he's out there at least. Like a Curtis Samuel. You can play a Curtis Samuel in tournaments too. What is he? 3,500. We'll get a couple of targets if he takes one to the house, like he did against Denver. Yeah.
Might as well go Matt Collins too if you're really at it.
Well, if you're, there's just not that much opportunity cost. So if you're playing like the Millionaire Maker or the $3 max, you kind of have to consider all these guys. Keon Coleman, I think, can be considered too, just because we know he has big play upside. I mean, we've seen him. Saw him have some awesome touchdown catches late in the season. Amari Cooper, I don't know.
I mean, again, 2 games, 4 teams. Me and Ryan have agreed on everyone so far. I put together a lineup really quick before our show, and we've agreed on every player. So, I mean, this is for cash games. So that's just kind of, on an outward look here that for cash games, at least it's, and then
relatively straightforward.
Yeah. And then people build their GPPs pretty, I mean, obviously there's people with a ton of
I would say that's a good thing to bring up. Cash is like relatively straightforward. So when you're making your GPP lineups, look at the cash lineup and think about the guys that you don't think are good plays. Like, oh, why is this guy going to be chalky? I don't think that, like a Hollywood Brown type last week. Some people thought he was a lock, and I talked to some other people, maybe sharper, that was like, no, at that ownership, Hollywood's the best fade on the slate, and they printed money. We'll get there when we talk about tight end, I guess, but yeah, it's an interesting slate in that way.
I got our percentages up on the site here, which are usually off, but McLaurin close to 70%. That can't be right.
I think him and AJ Brown will both come in around 40.
Okay.
Would be my guess. 45. Both. I think they're both going to be, around 45.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that would make more sense than McLaurin
in the 40s. Like all those guys. Devonta Smith around 40. Like Khalil Shakir or around in the 45 for Shakir.
This is based off of the projection of AJ Brown. 5 less points to McLaurin, which you can
and it also must be said, ownership projections, like Is this the projection for cash games? Is it projection for the millionaire maker? Is this the projection for small field high stakes? I mean, they're very different. But yeah, I think we give a good rough estimate.
Yeah. Let's move on to tight end here. Travis Kelce, 6,000. Is he going to be 100%? Will he be 100% in cash, and will he be 90% in tournaments?
Man, he should be 100% in cash. He won't be. In tournaments, I think you can fade him, but I don't know. The more I don't really want to, Adam. Playoff Kelce, as you say. I mean, they did raise his price 100 or 1,000. Sorry, so that's something. I think he has ran pretty well in terms of like range of outcomes, meaning that he had a 49-yarder. You know, that 49-yarder was relative. You know, that doesn't happen all the time with Kelce anymore. And then against the Steelers, the longest touchdown at the end too. So, I mean, there are scenarios where Kelce just, you know, is there a world, Adam, where he can just have like 6 for 60? Probably, but like
a touchdown.
Yeah. I don't know. He's a great play. Yeah, you're playing him in cash games.
6 for 60 still pretty good here in the spot?
Yeah, 6 for 60 is still pretty good, right? So if you want to just play Kelce in every lineup, I have no problem with that. If you want to fade him in tournaments for leverage, that's fine too. You know, anytime a guy's going to be 75% owned, it means you can fade him if you want to. I think me and Adam are probably going to play him.
What's your read on the Buffalo safeties and linebackers against Kelce?
I just don't really think it matters at this point.
Yeah.
There's just too many other guys to cover. Worthy's out there, Hopkins, Hollywood Brown now, and Kelce will get manufactured targets. It's just not something to worry about. You know, so many times where he just runs 10 yards and turns around and he's just, no one's ever you can't just put a guy there on him. It doesn't make sense. So like, he's just going to get those.
Yeah, it's always the same thing. It's like, why is this old guy who's slow just always wide open? And it's like, well, if you put selective coverage on him, that's just gonna leave openings for all these other guys.
Yeah, so it's probably not the way to do it. So Kelce seems like a pretty good option.
Would you rather leave a guy who is the slowest, maybe one of the slowest guys on the field open, or Xavier Worthy or Hollywood Brown open for an 80-yard touchdown?
So yeah, you got to keep stuff underneath. That's the big thing in the NFL these days. You're absolutely right, Adam. The best defenses are keeping stuff in front of them.
All right, so I guess we need more tight end talk as well in case you want to do that in your flex. So we got Goddard 4,500. I assume he'll be playing. Ertz is 4,300. Kincaid 3,600. It's kind of what we're looking at. Noah Gray will have a couple looks. That's about it. I think Zach, so I guess the question will be, these guys are all in the range of the wide receivers we were talking about. De'Ami Brown, Hollywood Brown, Hopkins, Cooper. So what about those guys compared with Ertz, compared with Goddard, I guess is the question here.
Yeah, I think they're similar. They're all similar plays. So the past two slates, double tight end has been the popular strategy, especially in cash games. I think that's going to be the case again. And I think people will end up on Kincaid as the second tight end in cash.
Oh, really?
Yep. You know, and that's an interesting one because he was chalk in cash last week. I mean, in the high stakes stuff, he was over 50%, and the week before that as well. Now you look at his game log, and
I haven't played him. I don't think I played him all season.
Yeah, I played him 2 weeks ago against Denver. Fortunately, it didn't matter. He actually did 7.7. It ended up being okay. Last week, fading him was the only reason I made any money. I played Higbee instead. It was huge. I played Higbee and likely. But if you're reading into it, that means I faded Kelce, so I didn't do that great. But yeah, in this slate, I think people are going to go to Kincaid, Adam. It's probably a better script for Buffalo too than it has been recently. Kincaid's just a guy with so much talent too. We've seen big plays out of him. I know his game logs in the last three look bad. Before that, he was getting 7 targets a game, 7 targets, 7, 10, 7, 6. So if they're in a game where they're playing fast and playing from behind, Kincaid's only 3,600 now. So I get it. I probably will be fading in tournaments if he's going to be the second most popular. I mean, I'll have some. Just the 3,600 is so cheap now, but I like some of the other tight ends too. Like I said, Goddard. I don't know how I feel about with this Goddard injury now. Kind of liked him before. Like he missed another practice yesterday, so we'll see what's up with that. And Ertz, yeah, he continues to be Daniels' favorite target in the red zone. They like running those slants to him. Caught another one last week. Yeah, I think it's a good script. Mentioned I like all the Washington pass catchers, so I like Ertz too. What do you think? Who's your second favorite tight end?
Yeah, I initially put Ertz in, but it is pretty close. I mean, the injury with Goddard's been decent. I don't know. Well, I guess we're talking early Friday. We haven't gotten a practice report yet, so if he's limited or whatever in practice Friday, we'll see. But he didn't practice Thursday. We'll see if that ends up mattering. But yeah, I mean, you dive through some of these numbers. Kincaid was out in the first meeting against the Chiefs. Knox ended with 4 catches for 60 yards on 6 targets. And you look at the numbers, 29th. The Chiefs are 29th worst against tight ends in DFS. Again, I mean, that's just kind of a random stat there, but maybe a little telling there in terms of where teams attack their defense. And I guess if you look at it, if Kincaid, the difference of 1K, if he can get you Allen or Daniels at quarterback, or if he can get you someone else that you're looking at instead of, I don't know, if you want to get off Chalkworthy and play both AJ Brown and McLaurin or something like that. And then yeah, I think it's reasonable to go down to Kincaid instead of the Goddard, instead of the Ertz. I think that would be a logical move. I think if it can get you better things or other things that will take you off of chalk, then I think that's logical.
Yeah. And in that same vein, you could consider Dawson Knox because he's 2,600. All he needs to do is catch a touchdown. You can consider Noah Gray. Noah Gray can catch 3 or 4 balls and a touchdown in this spot. We've seen it plenty of times. You can play Noah Gray with Kelsey in a Mahomes double stack. These guys are just so cheap. Like you said, if it gets you other stuff, if it gets you different constructions, then it's okay because they don't need to go off. They can score 8 or 9 points sometimes and be optimal.
Yeah. And defense, more so, I think, than the last couple slates. I don't think it matters here. I don't think defense really matters here unless you have an extreme take on what way you're going. Because
nope, I think you're right. I think Eagles will be the most popular because they're the biggest favorite, and Washington has the lowest implied total. So I expect the Eagles to be. They might get up to 50%, but probably in the 40s. But then, pretty much play whoever you want, right? The Commanders will be the least popular, would be my guess. But we saw they were the least popular last week, and they put up 17 against Detroit. And actually, our buddy Mo Hendy played them in the luxury box, and he took second for 100K with a Washington stack. He had Daniels, Ertz, and Commanders D, all low owned. Go off. So, I mean, that was a thing, though, where, you didn't want to play the Commanders D, but they were the cheapest, so you had to. Maybe you have to do that on this slate. And, it's only 2 games, so there's plenty of scenarios where no defense scores, more than 6, or, no,
right. I mean, that's why I'm kind of surprised to hear you say, they're going to be more than 50%.
I think, Adam, it's just because you can afford them. There's not a lot of difference. There's a 600 difference between all the defenses. Almost nobody really wants to play the Commanders. So you can just afford Eagles, and they're a really good defense. They've been on a good run. You know what I mean? You can just afford them. Yeah, it's just a default click.
I just feel like any of these
who
teams,
are you trying to click? Who do you want to click?
Teams, probably the Commanders. Any of these teams could get a touchdown or whatever, fumble recovery for a touchdown. Any of these teams could get a touchdown. And you look at the Eagles and Chiefs, okay, top defenses, but they're playing Daniels and Allen. These guys don't get sacked very often. And so what are we looking at? 6, 7, 8 points for Eagles Chiefs? Is it
how many times did Hurts get sacked last week? A lot, right? I mean, it was in the snow, but
yeah, I mean, it's not like the Commanders have a good defense, but I think they've gotten a sack every game this season. They got a few sacks. So any of these teams could have turnovers. The Bills haven't turned it over in however long. The Chiefs haven't turned it over in however long. Jalen Hurts arguably has been playing, or maybe is the worst quarterback of the 4 remaining. So why not just play the Commanders, who are
Okay,
cheapest?
yeah, no, I think that's
Eagles are going to be
perfectly fine.
most expensive here, I just think I think in my mind it's clear. Let's just go with Commanders. Like I don't care to spend 3,300 and get 6 points with the Eagles.
Yeah,
That's my
I
thought.
don't mind that. I don't mind that. That seems fine. I would say, like, who's more likely to have more turnovers, Daniels or Mahomes or Allen?
Hurts.
Okay, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm just like, playing devil's advocate. I would say Hurts probably finishes with the least amount of pass attempts. Probably throws the least interceptions on average. But yeah, takes sacks, and defense doesn't matter. Like, play whoever you want.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say extend it, but we don't need to extend it. We don't need to extend this discussion.
I thought the Chiefs D has been playing pretty well, though, too. If you want to play the Chiefs D, their D line is actually really good. I mean, Chris Jones, one of the best. Karlaftis has been sacking everybody. So, I mean, it's one of those where, like, don't listen to anybody. Just play who you want. Like, Adam made a great case for the Commanders. Some people like the Eagles. It doesn't matter. It's like goalkeeper in soccer in a way.
Yeah, let's bring soccer into this conversation. All right, so that's what we got here, and we basically mentioned every player you're going to play on the slate. But do you have?
Yeah.
Is there a favorite tournament play who you're like, this guy isn't as popular as he should be? Like, I'm not talking Commanders defense here. Is there a guy who's not as popular as you think he should be? That is kind of drawing your eye in some of these.
Man, that's so tough. Okay. Yeah. I just got to say De'Ami Brown then. I don't think he'll end up. He was not going to end up like that popular in the 20s probably, and I don't know. I think it's pretty sticky what he's done the last 2 weeks. So let's see.
I'll say Brian Robinson because people look at Eckler as the reception merchant there for Washington, but I think Robinson, he can catch the ball, and he's more likely to get goal line carries. And I know it's a tough matchup, running between the tackles against the Eagles, which, okay, it is. All these are kind of tough matchups, but not many people are going to play him, right? He's not going to be.
No.
He's not going to be popular. 5,600 here in this spot. Maybe gets 2 touchdowns. Maybe gets 4 receptions. Maybe he only has 20 rushing yards. But if he's getting me 15 to 20 points, that could be more than every other running back outside of Barkley. So
and yeah, you might only need like 12.
Right.
Maybe 12 or something. Yeah.
given the other options here. So
yeah, good call.
But yeah, that's it. I think that's not enough. We're almost at 45 minutes here. I think we've talked about everything we can talk about. But rotowire.com/pod to get a 48-hour trial on the site. You can find Ryan at Ryan Belongia on Twitter. I am at Zdroik. Hit us up in the Discord, rotowire.com/chat, if you have any further DFS questions. I'm sure someone will be in there to answer any question that you have leading up to the kickoffs. We're talking Friday morning, so if some injuries come out between.
Oh yeah, regarding injuries, just if it's not obvious, I'll just say if Goddard's out, Grant Calcaterra is min price, so probably just a cash game lock. If that ended up happening, you're playing with Kelsey, obviously, not over Kelsey.
If that's the case, I'll just fade him.
In tournaments, it'd be a great fade. Cash game's easy click.
Yeah, and then I'll be on top of everyone in the cash game, so it'll be easy when he gets 1 catch for 5 yards.
It's not, if you don't play tournaments, playing cash like that isn't the worst thing if you're just looking for a binary outcome. Like last week, if somebody could have gone into the week saying, I think there's a huge edge in cash this week because I don't want to play Hollywood Brown or because I don't want to play Dalton Kincaid. If you're fine with outcomes like that, where you just want to get 1 or 2 things right, I do play cash like that sometimes, especially on showdowns. And a 2-game slate is very close to a showdown slate. So, yeah, in cash games especially.
Unfortunately, we don't have kickers.
Yeah. But you're right. And on these smaller slates, these 2-game slates, there's going to be long trains in cash. People play the same exact lineups. So if you want to take make a bold move and fade one of those popular guys, that's fine. Just know what you're getting into.
Yeah, simple 2v2 even, something like that.
Yep.
But those were the wise words of Ryan Belongia. That's all we got. Rotowire.com for all of your DFS and fantasy needs. Thank you for listening, and good luck on this one.
Thanks, Adam. Good luck, everybody.
Maybe we'll see everyone in a couple weeks for the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens.
Oh, yeah, we will.